Hey Rip City, this is Matisse Leibel, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blizzard fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 145 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am your host, Casey Holdahl, and the Portland Trail Blazers, 10 games remaining, had a big weekend, both a good weekend and a bad weekend, had some good things happen. Fortunately, the Blazers are so close and have such little room for error in the race for the last spot in the play-in, 10th seed, that even having one off night compared to one good night can really make the difference with so few games remaining. So the Trailblazers do get an important win versus the Nuggets on Friday, but then follow that up with an equally important loss to the Celtics on Sunday. We'll discuss the play-in tournament, look at the schedule that the team that the Blazers are facing or they're competing against for that last playoff spot on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, the Trailblazers had what I think of one of their more entertaining, one of their more fun games on Friday, defeating the Nuggets 128-109 Friday at Moda Center. Nuggets without Nikola Jokic, Trailblazers without a number of players as well. Didn't have Anthony Simons or Donovan Clingan. Both those players hit the injury report the day of the game due to illness. There's been something that's been going around, catching people. I mean, some of you at home probably, that this not exclusive to the NBA. I'm guessing quite a few of you have experiences as well. I don't know how I've ducked it all this time, and that's a world-class jinx, so I'll probably get sick some point in time on this road trip that we're going to be heading out here in the middle of the week. But the Trailblazers had a number of players, obviously Nuggets without Nikola Jokic, and a game that they really had to win to kind of stay in the conversation floor of the play-in race, particularly with both the Suns and the Mavericks also winning that night. And the Trailblazers were able to do that even without Anthony Simons and Donovan Clingan. They do start off slow, but are able to come back, end up playing really well in the second half to win that game. They actually went into the half trailing 59-54 and then outscored the Nuggets 74-50 in the second half behind 61% shooting from the field and 50% shooting from three to secure that victory. Again, in a very fun game, an exciting game. You had a lot of players step up and kind of take on the mantle and have a part in winning, which is what you really love to see, particularly when a team is without a number of players like the Blazers were on Friday night. You have Denny Avdia, who is on a absolutely heater right now, putting up some numbers in this stretch that few players in this course of a stretch have put up in some time. Denny, 75% from the field shooting in that game for a season high 36 points to go with 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and a block. He is now averaging 25.6 points on 54% shooting from the field and from three, 54% shooting from the field and from free for Denny, and 10.2 rebounds, 5.6 assists in his last 5 games. So Denny averaging a double-double with a bunch of assists while shooting better than 50% from both the field and from three. Blazers are nowhere close to being even in the conversation for the play-in if it's not for the way that Denny has played as of late. He has really risen his game to another level. You can tell he really wants to make the play-in, wants to have an opportunity to get to the playoffs. A lot of these guys haven't experienced that, and their play is reflecting that. And I think, what we've seen out of Denny these last couple weeks, really impressive stuff. Again, I think really kind of increases your expectations of the player that he might be able to be going forward after first season here in Portland. He put up a career year last year, putting up even better numbers this year. And I think really just, again, scratching the surface of what he's able to do in the NBA, kind of figuring out where he fits, how he works on this team. And it's really been impressive to watch. He has been absolutely phenomenal as of late. Shaedon Sharpe, a very good game from Shaedon as well. 23 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. Delano Banton coming off the bench with Anthony Simons out. That obviously bumps everyone else in that guard rotation up. Delano comes in off the bench, does what Delano does, gets buckets, 19 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. I even asked Delano kind of about his defense in that game, and I was prefaced it in kind of a stupid way in saying that, you're really kind of known more as an offensive player. And he was kind of like, I feel like I'm pretty good at defense too. I don't know if that's necessarily a fair summation of my game, which, fair enough. So great game from Delano Banton. And again, a guy who, anytime Delano's number is called, seems to go out and really plays well. Along with Dwop, both those guys, had roles last season, or at least earlier on in this season, kind of diminishing as the season goes on. But when their number is called, come in ready to play, ready to go, and really affect winning in that game. Blazers don't win that game without Delano Banton's effort, or Dwop Reith, who also came off the bench in the first half. They started Chris Murray with Donovan Clingan out, went real small. Didn't work, I think, as well as they would hoped it would have. Duop ends up getting those minutes and does a really great job. Ends up starting in the second half, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal for Duop in that game. Scoot Henderson got the start in that game as well with Anthony Simon sitting out, 16 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and a steal. Tamani Kamara 16.6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals in that game as well. And again, just a really fun, exciting game. And, just a real reminder of how fun games are when there's some stakes, when there's something on the line. And, the Blazers know that like if they want to have a shot to get into the play in that 10th seed, games like that game on Friday versus the Nuggets, particularly with Nikola Jokic out, that's the kind of game they have to win. And first half, they struggled a bit, kind of figured some things out in the second half, end up win going away in that one. And again, just goes to show that like, when there's something to play for late in a season, the way that the players kind of approach the game, and I feel like both Danny and Delano kind of talked about that in the post game. It just you would like to say that like players go out and play the exact same way regardless of what's on the line, what's at stake, whether or not they're in the playoff race, they're going to go out and do the same things every single night, regardless. It'd be nice if that were the case. It's not the case. I mean, and that's just I mean, I think that's in any job. When there's more at stake, you tend to be more focused and bring a different level of attention and quality to those opportunities. And so, that's what we're seeing right now with the Blazers is that, they haven't really necessarily been engaged or had much to play for the last couple seasons at this point in time. And even just having something like the 10th seed, potentially just a one game playoff to kind of stay motivated really feels like it is having that effect on this team. And again, like perfect world, you get that all 82 games. That's just not the way the world is. This world is not perfect, as I'm sure I don't really need to tell any of you. So to have something to play for really does bring a certain edge to a game, a certain excitement to it, and then you feel that in the building. Hopefully, you feel it when you're watching on television as well. If you're not making it out to Moda Center, there's still a few games remaining here this season. So if you want to check this team out, you only got a few more opportunities. And games like on Friday, absolutely a great way to spend an evening in Portland at Moda Center in a incredibly exciting game on Friday. Unfortunately, the Trailblazers not able to follow that up with the same kind of performance on Sunday versus the Celtics. Granted, that Celtics team, second time playing them the last couple weeks. They were once again playing without a number of players. Didn't have Jaylen Brown in that game. Didn't have Kristaps Porzingis. Didn't have Drew Holiday. Celtics still able to win that one, 129-116 on Sunday afternoon. And again, that Celtics team they're just really good. Jason Tatum is really good. Peyton Pritchard, coming off the bench, got 3 fouls early on in the game, had to sit for a bit, still ended up playing 30 minutes in that game, puts up some great numbers as well. Sam Hauser had a great night shooting. There's a team too that like they have a style of play and they play it and they've got the talent and you can try your best as the Blazers did. They did get Donovan back and Anthony back for that game. Still were not able to. I mean, it was kind of a game in the first half. Blazers made it close towards the end, or at least closer than I think I mean, they still ended up losing by 13. But that was even closer, I would say, than it kind of felt. Any chance the Blazers kind of started to feel like they were getting close. Um, Celtics hit a couple 3 pointers in a row, and then you're right back down to being down 15, down 18, down 20. So just a really good Celtics team. And that's one of those games too. I thought Chauncey Billups really said it well, in his post game was that, they're just a better team than us. Like there's no two ways around it. Like they have more talent. They are better drilled in their system. They know what they're doing. They won a championship last year. They're rounding into form in an effort to win a championship this year. And they just came in and bested the Blazers. That's about kind of what you would expect. And the thing that really kind of sticks with me about that game too, and you see this with really good teams. The Warriors, when they were at their height, were a team that always did this, and they're kind of getting back to that now, is finishing quarters strong. And really good teams finish quarters strong. And that's what the Boston Celtics did to the Blazers on Sunday. You know, again, I feel like multiple times they get down to like 7 or 8. There's about a minute left in the quarter, and then the Celtics score like seven straight. And then, quarter ends, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait, we're down 15 points now. Like we were just down six a minute ago. And that's just what they do is they maintain a level of focus throughout the entire game, particularly late in quarters, that really just kind of grinds you down and is something that's, younger teams without that level of experience, teams without that level of talent, just don't really have the ability to tap into. And teams like the Celtics, teams like, as I mentioned, the Warriors in the past, those are the kind of teams that really can take a game that feels like it's like, yeah, we're within reach of this one, and then within a minute, particularly late in quarters, all of a sudden you're looking up at the scoreboard when you're heading walking to the bench. You're like, wait a minute, we're down 15 again. So that can be demoralizing. And again, the Blazers put up a good fight. They did their God's honest best. They played a pretty good game, but the Celtics they again, they're very well drilled, they're well coached, they've got a lot of talent, they've got the experience, and they're out to try to win another one. Which they're I mentioned this on Twitter last night. They're like 5.5 games, maybe to 4.5 games now behind the Cavaliers for first in the Eastern Conference. And that's kind of tough to figure. Like the haven't played the Cavs in Cleveland, haven't seen them recently. Obviously, they're going to play the Blazers on Tuesday night, so maybe I can say something more definitively after that. But man, that Celtics team, hard to see anyone in the East beating them. And when they play like when I won't go that far, but a very good team, a team that I was surprised is not in first and would be the team that I will expect will to come out of the Eastern Conference this year because they're playing really good basketball. They're hitting a lot of threes. Threes are better than twos. They took 53s on Sunday afternoon. They hit 23 of those. Um, that's pretty good business for the Celtics. So the Trailblazers, as I mentioned, put up a good fight, but just not on the same level at this point in time versus the team like the Celtics. And unfortunately, neither the Suns nor the Mavs played on Sunday, so the Blazers losing half a game in the race for the 10th seed in the process. To recap the stats from that one: 23 points, 6 rebounds, 4 6 in 38 minutes for Shaedon Sharpe, who has been doing a phenomenal job of finishing at the rim as of late. Tom Haberstroh has had some great stats about Shaedon's last 10 games finishing at the rim. Asked Chauncey about it as well, and I mean he made a really good point that is a somewhat obvious point, but it's a good one, which is that when Shaedon's at the rim and he jumps, like there's not many guys that can go with him. And at a certain point, you kind of get up to the top of your jump, and you're like, hey, I'm by myself up here, and it makes it a whole lot easier to get good looks at the rim when there's not a whole lot of guys that can get up as high as you can. So he's been using his athleticism and his ability to kind of get to the rim and then finish, and that's been a really good thing for Shane. Particularly his 3-point shots, bit of a struggle as of late. So getting to the rim and making things happen there, definitely a good thing. But I mean, it's a great thing for Shaedon, period. Like even when his 3-point shot is going down. So if he can kind of get both those parts of his game dialed in, who's to say what Shaedon can do? Tumani Kamara, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Denny Avdia, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 steal. Another double-double for Denny. Anthony Simons, 15 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. And Matisse Thybulle, who is really rounding into form here at the end of the season after not playing for a year. Looks great out there. Really happy for Matisse, getting an opportunity to play and looking great while doing it. 12 points, 3 rebounds, 2 steals for Matisse in the losing effort as well. So as I mentioned, the Trailblazers get one game on Friday. That's great. But then end up losing the game on Sunday. That's not so great. So no ground really made up this weekend for the Trailblazers. And with both the Suns and the Mavericks playing on Monday, Trailblazers could be even further back by the time they face the Cavaliers in the last game of a 7-game homestand on Tuesday afternoon, or Tuesday night, I should say. 7 o'clock start time on KATU 2.2 and Rip City Radio. And probably some tickets available too if you want to head out to Moda Center, see the Cavs. I imagine they're going to have the full complement of players this time. Blazers took them to overtime in Cleveland without Donovan Mitchell. Not sure if they're going to chance that again in Portland's house, particularly in a game that the Trailblazers really need to win. But we will see. Well, if the Trailblazers aren't able to end up making the play-in, their season will be over here before too awful long. A lot of players heading out to start their vacations, maybe hitting the links And you can hit the links with an unforgettable experience which awaits you at Spirit Mountain Casino's Top Golf Swing Suite. Enjoy your favorite virtual games on an immersive big screen, now with discounted midweek rates. Who doesn't want to go to Spirit Mountain Casino during the midweek and it's spring break right now? Plenty of time to get out there, hit some golf balls with the kids, maybe lay a few bets, check out the beach. It's a great time. Grab 5 of your friends and head to your bay now at Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Check out the Spirit Mountain Casino Top Golf Swing Suite, only at Spirit Mountain Casino, Highway 18, Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. Well, in your play-in race update, the Blazers remain in 12th with a 32-40 record with 10 games to play, which is 2.5 games back behind both the Suns and the Mavericks, who are at 34-37. Also, right behind the Trailblazers, technically tied right now, are the Spurs. So, they got to worry not only about trying to pass teams ahead of them, they also got to worry about the Spurs that are right behind them as well. I think the assumption is that the Spurs probably not all that interested in making the play-in, but they're still winning games. So, and they're still right there. So the Blazers, granted, if they're not able if they're not able to hold off the Spurs, it doesn't matter because they're not going to be able to catch up to the Suns and the Mavericks. But still something to consider too. Whenever we're talking about kind of the teams around the Blazers in that playing conversation, as of right now, you still got to consider the Spurs in that conversation as well. So in terms of what's coming up for the teams around the Trailblazers, both the Suns and the Mavericks play on Monday night. The Suns host the Bucks. I believe Damian Lillard sitting out that game, while the Mavericks face the Nets in Brooklyn. I believe that's the first game of like a 4 or 5 game road trip for the Mavericks, who also play. It's first time of a back-to-back. They do the New York Brooklyn Knicks back-to-back, which that kind of stinks. Let them have some extra time in New York. We're going to be spending, I think, 3 nights in New York here when we head out on this last long road trip of the season, which I know teams generally like. So, yeah, give them more time in New York. Don't cut them short in New York. If either of those teams wins, the Blazers will be 3 games back from the 10th seed when they face the Cavaliers on Tuesday, as I mentioned, in the final game of a 7-game homestand. The Suns schedule this week, they have the Bucks on Monday, the Celtics on Wednesday, at the Timberwolves on Friday, and Rockets on Sunday. That's a pretty tough schedule. Those are all very good teams. So if you're a Blazer fan and you're hoping for the Blazers to get to that 10th seed, you're really hoping that those teams are able to beat the Suns. As of right now, the Suns have the best odds of making it into the play-in at the 10th seed. So a tough week for the Suns in terms of their schedule. A good week for the Trailblazers if the Suns are able to lose some of those games. If not, I would say, I've been saying this for a while now, but I feel like this week is kind of the week where by the end of it, you'll have a pretty good sense of whether or not the Trailblazers really have a good chance going into the last couple weeks of the season. Now, granted, at the end of this week, they'll only, I think, have 7 or 8 games remaining. So again, that's kind of a non-statement. But either way, you figure there'll be more clarity at the end of this week about Portland's chances. Obviously, if the Suns are able to beat the Bucks, Celtics, Timberwolves, and Rockets this week, Blazers are pretty much cooked. But if they lose some of those games, if they win more, I think if they go 2-2, the Blazers still maybe have a chance. 3-1 at that point in time, you're probably looking a little sus. Particularly with the Blazers only having a couple games this week, facing, as I mentioned, the Cavs on Tuesday, the Kings in Sacramento on Thursday, and then the Knicks in New York on Sunday. So kind of a light week for the Trailblazers. Not so much for the teams around them in the 10th spot. So again, that's a good thing for Portland if they lose those games. If they don't, not great. As for the Mavs, their schedule much easier. They are at the Nets on Monday, at the Knicks on Tuesday, at the Magic on Thursday, and at Chicago on Saturday. Also sounds like they're going to be getting a number of players back, including Anthony Davis, who I believe was listed as questionable for their game versus the Nets on Monday. So they're going to get some of their players back as well, which probably improves their chances. Though sometimes if a team is playing well, and they're playing okay right now, adding some other players back sometimes has a bit of a negative effect, at least for a couple games. So if you're a Blazer fan, again, that's what you're really banking on. The Mavs schedule, I wouldn't say that's easy, but those are definitely winnable games on their schedule, particularly versus the Nets and versus the Bulls. Both the Knicks and the Magic are in that playoff race in the East, so you figure they're going to give it their best try. Not so sure about the other teams there as well. So if you're the Blazers, you really need them to, again, if they go 500, you're probably still in the fight. If they go better than 500, at that point in time, you're probably you're further outside, and your vision inside is not getting any easier. So, um, a bit of a mixed bag for the Blazers in terms of the teams that there are versus against in that spot for the play-in. Suns, pretty difficult schedule, but they're playing some pretty good basketball right now. Mavs, somewhat easy schedule, and they're getting some players back, so that's probably not the greatest thing for Portland. Also, the other thing to consider as well, finally kind of ran this down a little bit, or at least as best as I could do, assuming that the tiebreakers for the play-in are the same as the tiebreakers for the playoffs, which I believe they are. I wasn't able to find anything specifically about the tiebreakers for the play-in, so I assume they just work the same as the playoffs. And so when you talk about those tiebreakers, I keep saying that the Blazers are 2.5 games back and potentially 3 games back if both the Mavs and the Suns, or the Mavs or the Suns, I guess either way, they would be 3 games back if one of those teams win. Both those teams could conceivably win. So that's 3 games. But really, when you think about it, when you're talking about being back, you have to consider the tiebreakers because if you just tie those teams, that doesn't mean you're in the play-in. You actually have to win the tiebreakers. And as I think you probably suspect, not looking so good for the Portland Trail Blazers in terms of the tiebreakers versus both the Suns and the Mavericks. When it comes to the Mavericks, if it ends up being a two-way tie with the Blazers and the Mavericks, the Mavs have the head-to-head tiebreaker by way of winning the season series 3-1. In terms of the Suns and the Blazers, they did tie the season series at 2-2. So then the next applicable tiebreaker after that, there's like a division tiebreaker. And then there's their record in division, but since they're not division teams, and since the Suns aren't winning their division, the next applicable tiebreaker for a two-way tie is conference win-loss percentage. The Suns' Western Conference record is 21-25, and the Trailblazers is 17-30 at this point in time. So the Blazers 4 games back from the Suns in terms of their conference record, and the Blazers only have 4 games remaining versus Western Conference teams. So that means if the Blazers lose one more game to a Western Conference team, they cannot win the tiebreaker versus the Suns in the two-way tiebreaker, which would mean that it's not good enough to just tie the Suns or the Mavericks. They have to actually be 1 game better than both of those teams. And then if you get to the three-way tiebreaker, also not good news for the Trailblazers. Three-way tiebreaker is the record between the best winning percentage between all 3 of those teams. So all the games played between the Suns, the Mavericks, and the Blazers. The team with the best winning record in those games gets the tiebreaker. The Suns are 5-3. The Mavs are 4-5, and the Trailblazers are 3-5. So the Suns win the three-way tiebreaker as well, at least if I did my math right, and at least if that is the actual right tiebreaker. So even though as of right now the standing said the Blazers are 2.5 games back from both the Mavs and the Suns, technically they're really more like 3.5 games back with 10 games to play because they can't just tie either the Suns or the Mavs. They don't have the tiebreaker, as best I can tell. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone out there will correct me immediately, but I don't think I am. So if that's the case, Trailblazers will need to finish with one more win than either the Mavs or the Suns because they do not have either one of those tiebreakers. So again, not great news for Portland's chances there. And then, I've had quite a few people ask me like, well, what are the odds in terms of like, what are the percentages? What does it say that Portland's chances are? I haven't really been able to find that anywhere. I'm not sure if anyone like runs those numbers. Someone probably does. People in Vegas probably do. And so what you do when you're trying to figure out what odds are, you go to some of the betting sites, and we're not able to find a whole lot of action in terms of which team you can bet on in order to say they're going to make the play-in. But FanDuel does have some odds posted. Only place I was able to find any. And Portland's odds of making the play-in, according to FanDuel, are plus 1,300. Those are the worst odds for any team that is on the board to potentially make the 10th seed. So that's, if you did make that bet and the Blazers did get it, that pays out really well. But if you're using it in terms of trying to figure out what the math folks feel like is going to happen, according to that, they do not feel like the Trailblazers are going to make the play-in. The Suns are minus 220, so that they have the best odds of those teams around 10th in order to make the play-in. The Mavericks are plus 135, so just a little better than even money for the Mavericks. You have to bet more money to get money back as the Suns. So Suns with the best odds, at least in terms of the folks in Vegas, of making the 10th seed. And just to kind of give you an example of kind of how far back the Trailblazers are in terms of those odds, the Lakers, who are currently in 4th, have better odds of making the play-in. They're at plus 900 than the Blazers have of making the play-in at plus 1300. So it's looking tough for the Trailblazers. They're going to need some help, and they're going to need to basically win every single game they can possibly win here in order to have a chance of making that play-in spot, which once again makes you feel like, if they could have just picked up a few games here and there in the season that they let slip away, they'd be in a much better position. Granted, the Mavs and the Suns are saying the exact same thing right now. That's just the way it goes. But, a bit of regret there, I would imagine, at the end of the season for the Trailblazers, getting this close to the play-in, knowing that there were definitely some winnable games on their schedule that they just did not win for whatever reason. Still a chance, still something to play for here, and I hope they continue to play as hard as they possibly can until they're mathematically eliminated, because it's just a lot more fun that way. But with every single day and every single game, Portland's chances of making that play-in haven't really improved a whole lot in the last couple weeks. So even though they've played really good basketball on this homestand, they've done the best that I feel like they could do on this homestand. But again, there are just some games out there that you look back on at the end of the season and say, boy, if we had been a little bit better for a few stretches here and there, we could have made that play-in. They still can, but it's going to be tough. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, thank you to our friends at Spirit Mountain Casino. Go check them out on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. I will be back from this next road trip. Sacramento, New York, Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago, then back home. Only one more road game remaining after that versus the Utah Jazz in Utah. But a 10-game, 5-game road trip to contend with before that. And by the end of that road trip, we will definitely, I would say at that point, know if there is really a feasible chance of making the play-in or if those chances are mostly mathematical. But until then, thank you so much for joining me. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I will talk to you later. I am Casey Holdahl. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, go Blazers.